I'm Stuart Spielman. I'm Senior Policy Advisor and Counsel for Autism Speaks. I'm also the father of a 22-year-old nonverbal young man with an intellectual disability and with autism. And the purpose of this session is to provide more detailed information about the Achieving a Better Life Experience program, otherwise known as the ABLE program. And my colleagues on this panel, call it panel, are, I'll start with you since I started with you last time first. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Ann Blackfield. I'm the Director of Interagency Affairs for the Maryland Department of Disabilities. And when we get into the presentation, I'll explain what my office does and what our role is with ABLE.
Hi, and I'm Mary Morris. I'm the CEO at Virginia 529 College Savings Plan, and we also have responsibility for building Virginia's ABLE programs, ABLE Now. So I have my College Savings moniker on, and I also have my new ABLE Now platform. We'll be opening later this year with our ABLE program, so I have the pleasure of doing both of those things.
So let me start off by asking all of you a question or a few questions. How many people here are from Maryland? Could you raise your hands? Okay. Virginia? Okay. Okay. DC? Quite a few people from DC this time. Okay, more than we had last time. Any other states? Okay. So Maryland, Virginia, maybe more Maryland than Virginia, but a good number of people from both states and a few people from DC. I want to start by giving you my email address, and I think we should all give our email addresses, if, just for further questions. So my email address is sspielman, so my first initial is S, so it's SSPIELMAN at autismspeaks.org. And if you have any problems, just ask any of the other Autism Speaks people, and they'll tell you how to get hold of me. So do you want to?
Sure. So my email address is ANNE .Blackfield, so B as in boy, LACKFIELD, at Maryland, which is written out, .gov. So Ann.Blackfield at Maryland.gov.
And how do they get hold of the question?
I think each of you, when you came in, have gotten one of our little flyers about ABLE Now. So I'm going to really send you to that. able-now.com is our website. And if you want to reach me directly, then you just send an email through that, and it will get me. And I've also got some cards rather than giving you something more to remember. But our phone number and web address are on that flyer. And we're going to be outside. We're set up outside, so you can get some materials anytime during the day. We'll be here most of the day.
So let me start by asking, how many people have heard about ABLE like in the last week or so? Okay, it's actually a fair number of people. And the rest of you, I assume, heard about ABLE some time ago, or okay, no? Okay, just hearing about it today. Okay, so let me start off by giving you some of the basics, and I'm going to go through this maybe a little bit more quickly than I did the last time, because I'd like there to be some opportunity for questions. So now I think all of you received some materials of Financial Planning Toolkit, and a lot of what we're going to be covering is on pages 16 through 20 of the toolkit, but we will also be talking about a lot of things that are not in the toolkit. So the ABLE Act, what we're going to be talking about is referred to often as the ABLE Act, or part of what we're talking about is the ABLE Act. You're going to hear the term ABLE used in many, many different ways. ABLE Act, ABLE Program, Virginia ABLE, Maryland ABLE. You're going to hear a lot of variations. But the genesis, the origin of all of this was a federal law, or is a federal law, that was enacted in December of 2014, and the full name is the Stephen Beck Jr. Achieving a Better Life Experience Act. I'd like to mention Steve because he was a friend of mine. Unfortunately, he passed away. He was a parent of a daughter with Down syndrome, and Steve wanted his daughter to be able to have the same things that every other child has, be able to have some funds for whatever her needs were, but that has historically not been available for people with disabilities. So that's the background, and I'm deliberately making this personal because we in the disability community have always felt, you know, I still feel that my kid with autism often gets a raw deal. So what the ABLE law did was to create a new savings option for many people with disabilities, not all people with disabilities, and I think that's an important point. This is a program for people with severe disabilities. It's not a program for, you know, people who have disabilities that don't meet a fairly significant standard, and we can go into this more. But what the federal law allowed was the creation of state ABLE programs. And Mary and Ann can talk about the programs in Virginia, but you know, you think about this as sort of a scaffolding approach. You know, the first step was to allow the states to do something. The federal government authorized a favored tax treatment for amounts put in ABLE accounts, which are created through state ABLE programs. So, you know, you're going to hear a lot of terms here, and we'll go through these. So one important feature of these ABLE accounts is that they are tax advantaged. You know, if you put money in an ABLE account and you use it the way it's intended, namely for disability-related expenses, that money, there will be no federal tax consequence on the spend of that money, and the money can accumulate without taxation. Now, there's another important advantage, and that concerns what are referred to as means-tested programs, means-tested federal programs. Medicaid, SSI. These are programs where you qualify or don't qualify based on financial standards. So having an ABLE account will not disqualify you from Medicaid, and that's very, very important. You know, so the two most important features of these accounts, I would say, are the tax status and the intersection between these accounts and programs like the Medicaid program and the SSI program. I'm going to try to quickly go through some quick rules here. You know, having done this once, I have the vast benefit of experience. I want this to be as interactive as possible and want everyone to have a chance to ask questions. So one important feature about these rules today is that you can open up an ABLE account anywhere you would like. This is a change. People will sometimes ask me, I'll sometimes get email questions, when is New Jersey setting up its ABLE program? I want to open up an account, and when does New Jersey set up the program? And the premise of the question is basically, I can't open an account because I live in Newark, and I can't open up an account until New Jersey creates a program. That was true, it's no longer true. So right today, you know, anyone in this room who wants to can open up an ABLE account, and we can go into that. You may decide to do that. You may decide not to do that for any number of reasons, but you can do cross-border ABLE accounts. Now, eligible individual can only have one ABLE account. This is a difference between ABLE and college savings accounts. Also, you know, importantly, what are the eligibility requirements? You have to be disabled before age 26. So if you're an individual, this is the current law. There is momentum to change this, but if you are a person who at 30 has a stroke and is severely disabled, you do not qualify for an ABLE account. But what's also important is if you have a disability that is diagnosed when you're 27, but that disability predates age 26, you will be able to open up an ABLE account. But there are standards about severity. You know, I'm mentioning this. It's basically an SSI, marked in severe functional limitation standard, degree of severity. Those, I'm trying to keep this simple as I go through this. We'll cover this again. Person who owns an ABLE account is a person with a disability. It's not the parent. Again, this is a difference from college savings accounts. The parent may manage the account, but the person who owns the account is actually the person with the disability. Anybody can contribute to an ABLE account. Grandma, grandpa, your next door neighbor. The current yearly limit on the amount you can put into an ABLE account is $14,000. That amount will change over time, but right now it's $14,000. Aggregate contributions, though, are very, very high. Maryland, what did you say it was?
I mean, you certainly can't put this in a year, but total the account can accumulate up to $325,000. And I believe it's higher in
Virginia?
Virginia.
How much can you put in an ABLE account?
Well,
Not today,
$1,000 a year.
Yeah.
But over time, the maximum contribution level is tied to college savings, and that's just in the federal regulation. So ours is going up July 1st, it'll be $500,000.
Okay.
So this is a serious, long-term, lifelong savings, a sort of aspirational thing. We see it for particularly parents or loved ones saving for someone for the future.
So I'm going to try to go through this quickly. So how can you use ABLE account funds? What are permissible uses? It's a long list. Education, and I mention education first because to some degree there's an overlap between ABLE accounts and college savings accounts. Education, housing, transportation, employment training support, assistive technology, personal support services, health, prevention, wellness, financial management and administrative services, legal fees, expenses for oversight and management, basic living expenses, funeral and burial expenses, and additional purposes described in regulations. Now, there are some things you can't do with an ABLE account. The precise limits are not defined yet, but I'm going to just hazard a guess and tell you that if you are planning on using your ABLE account to, bankroll you for a foray at the casino to be built next door here, you're not going to work. Not going to work. You're going to get in trouble. Don't think about that. One thing I should mention quickly is that, and you will hear people talking about this, there is something that people generally refer to as a Medicaid payback feature. So if you are on Medicaid, you create an ABLE account, and then you use Medicaid, the Medicaid agency providing the services can, or the state actually, can file a claim against your estate when you die. So, they don't have to do this, but this is one of the features of these accounts. I mentioned that Medicaid eligibility is not affected by ABLE accounts. For SSI purposes, only the first $100,000 in ABLE account will be disregarded. Again, nobody's going to have $100,000 in an ABLE account for years, 7 years or so. But what?
Depends on how well you're investing.
Well, it's going to be a while. 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 But if you use ABLE accounts for housing, that could affect your SSI check. It will not stop the SSI check from coming, but there are rules about housing. I think it's called the 1/3 rule. So it could diminish your check. But the important thing about ABLE accounts is these accounts are designed for people with disabilities, being mindful that people with disabilities usually rely, perhaps this is an accurate way, on programs like SSI and Medicaid. So there is a definite crosswalk between the two. This is not, we're going to create a disability savings program, but you have to choose between Medicaid and having this money that you're putting aside. That's not the way this is designed. So having giving this overview, I want to ask, going to reverse order. I'm going to ask you, Mary, to start first and talk about you know, the Virginia account, what's different, what's special, what's great about the
Okay.
Virginia
All
program.
right, let me throw a couple things out in case we run out of time, because I know this is a lot to cover. So I'd say, one, check out able-now.com. That's Virginia's website. It's pretty bare bones right now, but it has some basic information. You can give us some basic information on that, and we will start sending out email updates. I would also suggest going to ablenrc.org. That's Able National Resource Center, just to get some basics on these eligibility requirements, which can get pretty technical. So what the states are doing, why are the states involved, for one thing? That's really the college savings model, and that's how ABLE came to be. The states run these programs, and part of it is that we are involved so much in education and information and in running affordable, sort of easy to understand college savings programs, and so that's been translated over into disability savings programs. And so that's why the states are involved, and in Virginia, that's why it's the Virginia College Savings Plan. Because you can go into any state's program now, sorry, I keep having something, a frog in my throat. There are only a few states. States are kind of figuring out what to do still. These are going to be difficult to put together. We're trying to understand the landscape and how to provide programs that really are effective, cost-effective, simple to use. Ohio just recently opened, so that is one that's open now. You can open up an account today if you want to get started and save. There is free rollover from all accounts. So if your state, when Virginia opens, you want to put your money into the Virginia account, you can do that, even if you start saving with Ohio. Ohio and Tennessee are open today. They have websites, and I don't remember all the names, but really if you just type in Ohio ABLE or Tennessee ABLE or Virginia ABLE, it'll get you there eventually. Nebraska's opening up soon. Florida's also opening up soon, but I think they're limiting right now to Florida residents. Virginia is probably going to be the next wave. I think we'll be the next in December, and other states will flow from there. So you're going to see kind of a patchwork. But because the law changed in last December, you can open up anywhere. That was a really significant change. In Virginia, we're going to be a little bit different in that we will have two different programs within ABLE. And we hope that that's going to really hit the needs of everybody. So ABLE America will be built sort of on the same platform as our College America program with our partner, the American Funds. So if you work with a financial advisor, you'll have access to all of the American Funds mutual funds. We think that's going to be really for the longer term investors, folks who want to save as much as they can for as long as they can and may not want to use the funds, you know, on an ongoing basis. ABLE Now will be our direct program, more like our Virginia 529 Invest College Savings Program. You can open that up online with us once we open in December. It'll be a fairly simple way to do that. We're going to build it on what's called an HSA, or a health savings account platform. So the base will be an FDIC insured interest checking account, and they'll have some very simple, probably Vanguard life strategy funds. That's a sort of a diversified portfolio, conservative, moderate, or aggressive options. So those are low cost, they're sort of easier to understand, not so many options, and that's a way to keep that program cost effective. And ABLE Now will also have a debit card attached. So that'll be for our more transactional accounts. I think ABLE America will be for those who are more long-term investors. And that's maybe enough
Great.
for now.
So I'm going to, before I forget, I know we have several people here from DC today. DC group could not make it here today, but if anyone is interested in DC, send me an email. I will send you a link. They are taking expressions of interest. They want to know that you're interested, and they will have you on their contact list. I don't, you know, they will follow up. So I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Ann, to talk about what's going on in
Does
Maryland.
DC have, I don't know that they're planning right now. I haven't heard anything about them opening a program. So I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know if
no, they
they're-
do. So
And I-
Brenda Mathis, do you know Brenda Mathis? I've been in touch with them. So Brenda Mathis is actually running the program, and I was actually corresponding with
Okay,
them.
good to know, 'cause I wasn't sure.
Okay.
I think DC.
For those who are in Maryland, are you familiar with the Maryland Department of Disabilities? And just to clarify, not the Developmental Disabilities Administration. I know it's very confusing. So DDA, Developmental Disabilities Administration, is part of our Department of Health in Maryland, and they offer, run Medicaid services. My office is the Department of Disabilities. We're actually entirely separate. We're a very small office, and we were created to help people navigate disability services in Maryland and to provide basically disability policy advice to the governor and to other agencies. And we also take on sort of these interagency kind of projects. Maryland took a slightly more conservative approach. As Mary mentioned, a lot of the college savings plans programs in different states were designated as the agencies that are best equipped to do these ABLE programs because they have experience managing accounts for people, savings accounts, investment accounts. In Maryland, ours is very small compared to some states, and we wanted to really investigate what our options were. So Maryland in 2015 passed what we call the task force bill. So rather than starting development on ABLE last year, we had a task force chaired by my office that looked at the best way to, where was the best place in Maryland to put the program and how do we want to structure it. We did decide that in Maryland also our college savings program, which is called Maryland 529, is going to be the agency that will run it. But they're running it in partnership with my office because they felt like, they had experience with these savings accounts and investment accounts for college, but didn't have as much experience with disability services and SSI and things like that. So our office, we're working together on it, which is why I'm here, because our Maryland 529 program wasn't available to come today. Because we had to take an extra step to do research, our program will likely not be open until October 2017. But as Stuart and Mary mentioned, because you can roll programs over, you can only have one program at a time, but if you open in Ohio and then decide after a couple of years you want to move your program or your account to Virginia or to Maryland or to another state, you're allowed to do that. Because each state is likely going to, or each program is going to be slightly different investment options, different fees, things like that. In the Maryland legislation, there's two things that we added on in addition to the federal requirements. One is that Maryland means-tested programs are also not going to look at ABLE, at your ABLE funds. So not only is your federal Medicaid or federal SSI not going to be affected up to a certain point by your ABLE account, any programs in Maryland that are state programs, like some behavioral health services or voc rehab services in Maryland, are state programs. So those also will not be able to use your ABLE accounts against you when you're applying for these programs. The other thing, and that's actually true even if you open in Ohio, that's not going to be impacted. Where there's sort of a Maryland-specific advantage for Maryland residents to keep a program in Maryland is we also have a tax, a contribution deduction, I'm garbling my words, a tax deduction for contributions. So if you have a Maryland program and you're a Maryland resident, you can deduct up to $2,500 a year for contributions. And that's true for each contributor. So if you have 10 people contributing to a single ABLE account, which is allowed, I know we get questions about how many people can contribute to an account. As many people as you want. If you got 14,000 people to contribute $1 a year, that you can do that. It would be
Crowdsourcing.
Yeah, exactly. As long as your total contributions don't exceed $14,000. So there's the Maryland tax incentive. And Maryland is also, so we're watching what the other programs are doing and making sure that we're constructing a program that's going to be what people, trying to, learn best practices from our sister programs that are starting a little bit earlier. So.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good point on gifting. I think that's something to think about, and one of the things that as we build our program, we want to make sure that we make that easy, because I think gifting is going to be a tremendous way to, again, build contributions to these programs, and we're seeing that used more in college savings. I think will be even more important with the ABLE accounts. So, and in Virginia, there is a tax deduction for Virginia residents, because you have to be a Virginia taxpayer, and in the Virginia program, up to $2,000 per year per contributor. So it's a little bit different than our college savings deduction. So if multiple participants contribute, they all can take a tax deduction for those contributions to the Virginia program. But yeah, we think gifting is going to be a really large way to really expand these programs.
If you want updates from Maryland, we're trying to share information both about our program development updates and then also what's happening nationally. I'm sorry I didn't bring information, but if you Google Maryland Department of Disabilities, we have an ABLE link on our homepage. And I also encourage Maryland residents to look us up anyway, because if you have other questions that aren't ABLE specific, we're also there to answer questions about other, Medicaid or transportation or housing, or we answer your questions about government services.
So this is really, great opportunity for everyone to ask questions. We all want this to be interactive, so.
How is this different from a special needs trust?
So there are a number of differences between this and a separate needs trust. One difference is taxation. These are tax-preferred accounts. They are not, if they are used as designed, they're not subject to taxation. So there's no, you don't have to file tax returns on these accounts. There are other differences that are going to be, these are, there are other differences such as potential tax benefits. There are differences in access. Most people are not going to set up their own special needs trust. They're going to go and they're going to pay someone to do that. This is actually a good question, the entrance fees. So if you want to set up an account in Maryland or Virginia, how much money is it going to cost to set up the account?
So, well, if I can jump in, I think I've made them akin, as I've been learning, sort of to a first-party special needs trust. I think that's what they're most like, because the account owner has to be the beneficiary. And that can be a minor, so that you can have a parent or a guardian or a power of attorney or someone, or a recognized representative, I think, as Social Security uses, managing the accounts. But essentially the ultimate beneficiary is the person who has the disability, which means that there is that potential for Medicaid clawback, just like you have in a first-person trust.
Right.
And you can't have the third-person type of special needs trust. So that's just sort of off the table. But within that, it's going to be much less expensive, we hope, right? You don't have to pay fees to set it up. You don't have to worry about whether you need to bond the person who's doing it or have a lawyer. So some of the costs associated with special needs trusts you can avoid with an ABLE account, and that's why the states, again, are involved. So the investment options that are selected, that institutional management, professional management, basically, of your investment, you get for institutional rates and fees. In Virginia, we don't anticipate, or maybe it'll be, we haven't said that, probably $25 to open up the account. There's usually a minimum balance. The fee structure, we think, again, it'll be different between ABLE America and ABLE Now. But the HSA model will be a very small monthly fee, we anticipate. And then your asset management fees, which again, if we use Vanguard index funds, are very low. And then whether or not there's an administrative fee. But so again, low cost and no real setup fee at all.
Yeah.
It'll just be getting going.
So one possible question is, can you do both? The answer is yes. You can use a special needs trust. You can have, you can design a special needs trust for certain purposes. And you could also have an ABLE account. There is no ABLE either or, but I think the principal difference for me, and this is just my observation, is an access difference and how easy it is to set up this account. I don't know if you had $1,000 to invest, and that's about the limit. If you would want to set up a special needs trust, if the fee structure, seeing an attorney or whomever, that may not be on the table for you. Other questions?
It sounds like from the way these nice two ladies were talking, that if you're not in state, then it's not a tax deductible. Is that correct? So
That's-
like if you open
yes.
one up in Ohio, but we live in Maryland, because they're not going to start.
You wouldn't be able to take the Maryland
2007.
deduction if for a non-Maryland program.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And
But then when you transfer, it would become,
You could, yeah, as long
Yes.
as you're a Maryland resident and with
Yeah.
a Maryland program, or a Virginia resident with a Virginia program, you can take advantage of those state tax
And you get the
deductions.
deduction when you make the rollover.
yeah.
okay, I was just trying to.
Wisconsin's the only state.
I was gonna say,
Wisconsin
Wisconsin-
decided not to have their own program, but they're giving up
Yeah.
to a $14,000 deduction
Right.
to their residents, no matter what program they're
So,
in.
so go figure. Wisconsin initially was going to set up its own program, then decided not to do that, but said we are going to give Wisconsin residents a deduction for setting something up, in Illinois.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Question.
If the child already has a 529 account, can you transfer it to an ABLE account?
Not right now.
Not right now.
Federal legislation is pending. I suspect it won't go through this year just because nothing is with the election. But I think that's one that will resonate and will probably, I would anticipate it will pass next year.
So,
Yes.
you know, there's an awareness of rollovers. You know, there's an interest. I mean, I'm more of an optimist than Mary. I don't know. I honestly don't know if it's going to where this is going to go. But there's a realization that a lot of people set up a 529 and then realize that their child has a disability. And right now, you know, it's a cumbersome procedure. You'd have to cash out, and people
We have
realize.
tax consequences.
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah, tax consequences.
Potentially you're cashing
And
out.
that's what we want to avoid,
So that is not immediately possible, but maybe
Well, I
not too
think
soon,
that'll be
not too far along.
Just hold on to your 529.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say, because we became eligible for the Medicaid waiver, and we had 10 grand in a 529 under his name, and
Yeah.
he can't have any money, so I dumped, and we had a huge tax hit this year, because,
Yeah.
you know, he can't have any money, so now.
And that works, so was the account in his name? Or,
Well, he
or
was a
they looked at that?
beneficiary of it, and I was advised that since
That
that
would still
is
have an
considered
impact.
worth for him, and you can't have it if you become eligible for the Medicaid waiver,
Someone asked me that
so
question.
we had to
yeah.
dump it.
Yeah, you know, and
Yeah, that's done.
and the timing was just
It was-
terrible.
I mean, yeah,
The
we
timing
waited
is
9 years
terrible.
for the waiver,
Well,
and-
the timing is terrible because, Ann can talk to this, because if she put that money in a Ohio ABLE account,
They wouldn't have been able to, you wouldn't have had to dump it. You know,
Sorry, but
so
no other
in an
state
ABLE
should
account,
have
yeah.
Transfer that 529 account?
Well, but ABLE hasn't, basically, it sounds like that happened to you before ABLE started. So
Yeah,
now that ABLE
yeah.
accounts are available,
It did, yeah.
$10,000 in an ABLE account wouldn't count against you for Medicaid eligibility. So you no longer would have to dump money out of an ABLE account to qualify for
And this
Medicaid.
is the first time
529 is
I'm
different,
learning that
yeah.
I
So,
could have done it in Ohio, like I.
yeah.
well, Ohio,
Savings accounts are the same.
Ohio started June 1.
Last, yeah.
Oh,
just-
that's right, yeah,
Yeah.
you've been in the waiver for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
From a planning perspective, though, you can transfer 529 to a sibling. So if you
Yes,
have a
that's
sibling.
why I just asked. If there,
Yeah.
was someone else, you could have put that
Oh, no, you
529
can
money,
Right.
or in your own name, quite honestly. You can make
Yeah, you
yourself the
can move it to
beneficiary
somebody within your
of your
direct family.
529 account. So, sorry, I, you know, you had that
Oh, that's
question.
right, we just did it, he's an only, and.
Because you actually could have put it in your own name, though, the 529 account, and that's okay. Adults can have 529 accounts, so, yeah.
And ABLE is supposed to simplify some, I mean, it's, just, you know, it's gonna be pretty straightforward. It's in the person's name, but it's not going to cause these complications with
Right.
applying for Medicaid.
And
So.
from the perspective of, I'm a financial planner, so from the perspective of what's the difference between an ABLE and a special needs trust? I mean, the biggest thing right now is if you have more than $14,000, you need to put it somewhere, and it's not gonna go in an ABLE account. I
Yeah.
mean, that's.
Yeah,
So-
because
so-
you won't be able to,
yeah.
you're not, you can put $14,000,
Yeah.
but if you have $20,000 to invest,
And if
you
you
can
don't
only
want
do
it in
14.
name,
So, yeah,
Something
so
already
I
said.
think
Yeah.
there are lots of ways you can
I
describe
see
the
it as a-
differences.
As a compliment.
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should have
Right.
both. You
A lot
know,
of people are saying that it
Right.
could be like the more flexible version, you know, you can, there's
Your
talk about you
day-to-day
can move
spending.
money from special needs trust
Yeah,
to
and,
ABLE and vice versa.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned this, because what I'm struck by is how, you know, often it's framed one or the other. It doesn't have to be that way.
Should be.
If you have the money, it
Should
should
not
be
be.
both, really, so.
And Ohio's account is called Stable, S-T-A-B-L.
Stable.
Right,
So if you Google Stable.
right.
So.
I have a second question, sorry.
Forbidden, that'll cost you money.
So if you take money out of the ABLE account, is that tax? You pay
No,
taxes?
if you go to the casino, yes, but if you know, if you use it for an approved
Very broad.
qualified purpose, you're going to be fine.
Some of that's on the flyer that we gave you all.
Yeah.
It's very broad. We understand from Treasury that they're going to, it's going to be a very liberal interpretation
Right,
of that.
right.
Really, it's to enhance quality of life. So, yeah, we think that, you know, there are some potentially abusive ones, but other than that, it's going to be
And-
very broad.
And most states, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of them are doing what's called self-certification.
5 minutes?
Where you don't have to
Done.
submit a receipt ahead of time. Like you keep your you keep your medical documentation about disability, and you keep the receipts from what you were using, your ABLE accounts for, and then if you get audited by the IRS, you have to
That's,
show
that's right.
them.
So,
But no, most of the ABLE programs that are developing have no interest in being the gatekeeper for this money.
Right.
They don't want, they're not gonna make you ask for the money to withdraw it. It's not
so
gonna be like that.
we're out of time, but if you have questions, you have our email contact information, be happy to, follow up with you. All right, thank you.